Hi, everybody. This is Saad. I just returned from watching the movie The Brutalist, starring Adrian Brody and Guy Pearce. Uh, I very much appreciate Adrian Brody as an actor, and Guy Pearce has historically been one of my favorite actors. Uh, a part of which is because of his amazing performance in Priscilla, Queen of the Desert from many years ago. I would highly recommend you watch that movie. Of course, some of his political positions turn out to not be in line with what I might consider to be appropriate, but we need to separate apparently the art from the political positions of the artists. So there you go. So my quick thoughts on The Brutalist. It turns out to be a fictional story. I actually went in thinking that it might be a biopic of the founder or pioneer of brutalism. For those of you who don't know, brutalism is truly a brutal, brutally ugly architecture. It's imagine the uh, projects in various cities, or you know uh, the buildings behind the Soviet Union prior to the uh, breaking down of the Soviet Union, or all of the ugly concrete buildings that you might see. I mean, there's a very famous case of it in Toronto, but there are many. My own home university, Concordia, has a central building that would certainly belong to the brutalist movement. Now, I wanted to contrast this because the brutalist movement is actually the antithesis of biophilic architecture. And here's a perfect demonstration of a book that I got for you. This is from my personal library. So, biophilia is a term that was introduced by E.O. Wilson, the late Harvard biologist, entomologist. Biophilia refers to innate love of nature. And so, evolutionary architecture, which uses biophilic design, basically argues that there are certain uh, goals that we should seek to optimize when we are creating architectural designs that invoke our love of nature. So, for example, having more sunlight and more windows, possibly having greenery. When you have, for example, a living wall, you're incorporating a green element, and people like to interact with that, having possibly waterfalls. And more generally, there is something which I have written about in some of my previous works and some of my earlier books, prospect refuge theory. So, for example, uh, there are certain types of landscape designs that we are inherently and universally attracted to precisely because they confer a ability to see wide, hence prospect, while maintaining refuge, be seen. I mean, be able to see without being seen. And the argument is that that's a particular landscape that allows us, for example, to avoid predators. And so I took those principles and have argued that we can take prospect refuge principles and design shopping malls, retail stores, interior designs that are congruent with prospect refuge metrics. I even did a very, very interesting set of empirical studies with one of my doctoral students, where we looked at, for example, where would people choose to sit in a restaurant. And so there's all the different possible tables and seats where you could sit, and we can quantify how much each seat is congruent with prospect refuge theory or not. And not surprisingly, we found that people end up choosing the seat that maximizes prospect refuge. And I'm so frustrated that we've never yet published those that work, in part because that particular doctoral student has kind of gone off, and haven't heard from him for a few years. I still hold out hope that we might be able to both get his dissertation done and wrap up those projects. Now, in the animal kingdom, of course, there are many animals that are architects. In other words, evolutionary architecture is not only something that can be applied in the context of human architecture, right? But animals themselves have evolved the ability to create architectural designs that maximize something of evolutionary relevance. So, for example, termite mounds, nest design, beaver designs, right? And so some of these things could be considered extended phenotypes, as Richard Dawkins explains in, I think it was his 1982 book. And so a phenotype is the physical representation of an organism. The extended phenotype would be that there are things that happen outside of the phenotype of the animal, but are still within the purview of evolutionary pressures that create that extended phenotype. And so, all this to say that if you contrast the brutalist movement to the things that I'm talking about, evolutionary architecture and biophilic design and so on, in a sense, perhaps it took off precisely because it was a rejection of our innate human nature. So, there you have it, folks. I hope that you've enjoyed, in part, my discussion of the movie Brutalist. Well, I guess I haven't really discussed it. If I were to give it a rating, frankly, I would only give it about a 6.5. Number one, because I mean, it's okay for a movie to be 3.5 hours long, but I felt that it stayed too much on the dynamics between Van Buren, the patron who ended up paying Laszlo Toth, who's the fictional character in the movie, and it's just a dynamic between them. And then the movie veered into weird tangents. And so, spoiler alert, if you don't want to hear this, turn off now. At one point, the patron rapes a drunk Laszlo in this marble mine in Italy. That was kind of strange. And so it took off all sorts of weird, into weird directions that I didn't really quite see how it added to the story. So probably 6.5. But in any case, I mean, what I was most excited to talk about is the opposing of brutalism, which is, if anything, is anti-biophilic, to actual biophilic design, as captured in this book right here. There you have it, folks. If you like the work that I do, at the very least, please subscribe to the channel. It's free. If it's on YouTube, subscribe to the podcast. Again, those things really truly do help. And if you wish to receive some exclusive content, then subscribe for a very, very small fee, the equivalent of a latte, to my exclusive X content. Have a great day, everybody. Talk to you soon. Cheers.